Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, editor of Forbes Women. BalletX, a contemporary ballet company based in Philadelphia, is one of the most exciting contemporary ballet companies operating right now, and it is embarking on its largest tour ever. Joining us now is the artistic and executive director and also the co-founder of the company, Christine Cox. Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am thrilled to have this conversation with you.
So, for folks who might only know ballet through their only once annual trip to the Nutcracker, what do they most need to know about BalletX? What's the 30-second elevator pitch?
Ballet is for everyone. And Ballet X is really creating an environment where artists can come in and take ballet forward into the future. So expect the unexpected when you come to a show and go on a journey with us and love ballet like you've never loved it before. And if you've never felt like there was a spot for you to engage, there is. It is truly a dynamic, beautiful art form that is for everyone.
We'll get into that dynamic aspect that you bring, because I do think the trends in ballet have become more accessible and there are audiences who are waking up to that fact. But let's go back to the founding days of the company. You were a dancer for a very long time, and then you made the jump into business, into entrepreneurship, into raising money for this company. Take me back to those days. What was that shift like for you?
It was scary to embark on something so new. And I really personally just said, take the risks. You may make mistakes, but really just keep trying. And giving that gave me the freedom to jump into this unknown territory. And initially, it was a selfish reason because I wanted to do bolder, more daring work. And my co founder, Matthew Neenan, and we would just choreograph a lot of the pieces and just went for it. And then we started to bring in more outside voices, and the clarity of what we were doing was starting to come into focus. And, through each year, each step, it became clearer and clearer to me what our mission and vision were. And it's been such an exciting journey to discover with our community and our audience and myself personally what this can be and what it should be.
I heard you say on a dance podcast that there is no school for choreography or for starting a company. And as someone who grew up in dance studios, I can attest. We're learning how to do pirouettes and jetés. There's no side session in those lessons about starting a company. How did you learn, and what has been the biggest learning in your journey as founder or co-founder and executive director?
It's really that sense of the roots, grounding. I remember the first day at the PO box getting a check-in and someone donating $100 or donating, and then I would call them in the post office and thank them. And so that sense of gratitude, nonprofits, people don't have to give you their support. They're doing it because they love what you're doing. So making sure that the vision is about love and connection to the community, and that it really does impact people. And so I've loved this journey of discovering that and keeping that, for me, that gratitude from the very beginning. I want to surprise someone who gives a $50 donation. Hi, thank you so much for your support. Because there are the folks making it happen. Without them, we can't do this. So that's been a lot. And then building a team, building a company with the same vision and values that I want for our community, which is like, it starts with excellence, hard work, integrity, gratitude's right in there, things that are really important to me as a person.
Talking about the donors, you received a record $7.4 million donation from Dr. Joan DeJean earlier this year, or late 2023. She passed away, and she was a big supporter of BalletX. Can you talk about this donation and what it means for the company?
It's transformative. It gives us a platform to really dream about the next 20 years and to build upon that. And it won't set us, and we just sit back, and we have to dig deep because we do have plans for the future. We have an extraordinary strategic plan. We're in our second year of it. And she believed in this company and worked very hard in her lifetime and decided that I'm going to focus the majority of my life's work and give it to BalletX, because I think in the end she trusted us and she knew that this was going to go back to the community, back to the people that make the art happen, because that's really where our heart lies. It's in creating something magical in this lifetime together. So
And
I think about Joan every day. I am floored each and every day at what she has gifted this company.
it's a remarkable gift, and I'm wondering, as you look at the donor landscape more broadly, obviously it's an election year. A lot of wealthy individuals are being pushed to donate to political campaigns. Inflation has been high, which has been hitting the pocketbooks of regular consumers, those $50 donations that you might receive. How has the donation landscape been outside of Joan? Has it been a difficult year?
Yeah. We work very hard and diligently to build our trusted relationships and keep them thriving. So thankfully, our donors are staying with us, because you do not want your donors to assume that BalletX is set for life. They don't need my support. It no longer matters. So as we double down over the next couple of years, it's important to let all of our donors know, and I share with them how important each and every gift is. So we are continuing to build upon this gift. We have always been fiscally responsible. Every single budget in the last 19 years has been in the black, and we've been trying to put our own nest egg away, and we have. So, and that was part of why Joan felt comfortable. We have been fiscally responsible, but while also being generous with the people around us.
Every fiscal year in the black. That's remarkable given the labor and intensity of what it takes to put on a production. And you have been especially productive. BalletX has produced 130 ballets by more than 70 choreographers in less than 20 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How have you accomplished that level of productivity, and is it sustainable for the next 20 years?
I hope so, because there are so many artists out there who want to be a part of this dynamic company. And it's only possible with an extraordinary group of team, with an extraordinary team. So I have an amazing associate artistic director, managing director, rehearsal director, production. And so now we've built a company of 16 dancers who are on a full-time contract. That's 52 weeks with 4 weeks paid vacation minimum. So they're going off on vacation, not going on unemployment, and they're really feeling a security in their life, because it's a high demanding job. And then a company of 10 staff, which is, they're also the heart of the organization. They work hand in hand, company and staff.
I want to dig into that contract really quickly, because I heard you say in 2021 that your 3-year goal was to introduce 52-week contracts to your company. Can you, just for the folks who haven't grown up in dance studios, explain how rare it is for dancers to be on a 52-week contract?
It's rare. It's often in European settings where there's a government subsidy, and there's even a 13-month contract. And I just so admired the support, when a company can offer that to dancers. And so it's really been a goal of ours to change that. And that really comes back to fundraising. Where are your values when you're talking to your donors? What's important to you and your organization? What's important to your board? And our board and our community cares very much about our dancers and artists. And I understand the value of art in communities. It really is the heart of humanity. It's not some token thing in our culture. Culture is art, it's sports, it's what makes us human, it's creativity. So changing the narrative in America about how we think about the arts. And so my job as the director is to really advocate for that with our supporters. And, each and every person I'm talking to, bringing that forth. So when I was dancing and I had a 20-year career, money just wasn't something I worried about. I was worried. I was paycheck to paycheck. What can you do? It was where I was, but I had a 34-week contract, sometimes 40, and that'd be an amazing year. And you would end your Sunday matinee at an extraordinary theater, dancing to 2,000 patrons, and then you would go on unemployment when your contract would end, and that unemployment looks like your salary cut in half. Thank God for unemployment, because it made it all very possible. But that's the reality. No criticism there, because it's very difficult running a nonprofit. It's difficult to convince people that you should support the arts. Earned revenue just doesn't cover it. And if you start to raise ticket prices, you might make it less and less accessible for all Americans. So it's really, how do we value the arts in America is just, something, part of my job to advocate for that.
It's an existential question, but I think one of the ways you are tapping into communities is by creating dynamic ballets, which we talked about a little earlier in the conversation. Let's dig into what exactly that looks like. How do you define a dynamic ballet? How are you finding the choreographers that you work with, and what are you looking for? Because again, I think ballet, if you just poll a random person on the street, they think tutus and point shoes and buns, and there are some tremendously innovative ballets that have come across stages. I think of Akram Khan's Giselle, which was workers on the front line, and the costumes were different. There wasn't a tutu in sight, and so that's just one example. But how do you define innovation in ballet?
It's spotting the talent, the choreographers, building relationships with them, building a team that can create a space for them to feel vulnerable, for them to dream, building a conversation. So thankfully, there are so many extraordinary choreographers around the world. And as we've been here so many years, they start to go, wait a second, this company is the engine's still running. They're here for the long haul. And then you start to get all different types of choreographers at different stages of their development. So we've developed different programs, and we can go into that, but first and foremost, it's about seeing a spark of surprise when I'm looking at their work, kind of changing the perspective of ballet, seeing how, it can surprise me. And then, is there humor in it? Is it serious? Is it dark? Are they exploring classical ballet in a new way? So I'm just looking for voices that are willing to take some risks. And then we start building a relationship from there. And sometimes we bring a choreographer back 3-4 times. Sometimes we start a relationship and re-engage in a couple of years. It really is just about relationships.
You said sometimes you bring them in. How often is it homegrown? How often is it a dancer in your own company starts choreographing on the side and you happen to see them kind of working on something in the corner and you say, hey, I like that?
Yeah, it's starting to happen more and more, which is so thrilling. But I mean, the good news is this. We do have a homegrown choreographer. Her name is Kylie Kwan. She had created a duet for a gala that we had. We took the duet to the Vail Dance Festival, where Damien Wetzel was like, yes, let's bring this beautiful duet in. It's so much fun. And then from there, I commissioned her to make a piece during the pandemic that turned into a film because we couldn't perform in person. And long story short, 3 years later, she's about to premiere a work at New York City Ballet this fall. I mean, how extraordinary that the DNA of this organization is starting to go off and spread our passion for dance into other extraordinary dance companies. Mind-boggling, not New York City Ballet. I'm just so happy for her. So we hope to be a part of other stories like that with our dancers. And we're creating opportunities for them to choreograph this season. So we are loving this opportunity for them.
That's absolutely incredible. And as you talk about spreading your wings, let's talk about this tour. It's the largest that you're ever going to go on. Why now? What drove you to do this?
We want to, this is, New York is it, it's the Mecca. So we want to make sure we have our imprint there, and New Yorkers can see our work. We're so close. We want to be, we're like a sister city. And we want to continue to go there every year and say, look at this repertory, look at what we're doing. And so we'll just start that off. And then as a team, we're going down to Louisiana. Super excited to work with the actually public school district and share our work with their community. We're headed up to Texas A&M, or over rather. And then we're going to go to Chicago, the Harris Theater, which is just a dream come true. And then we're going to head on over to the Kennedy Center and perform in December for 4 shows at the Eisenhower Theater, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. And we'll be performing with the Kennedy Symphony. So it's so exciting.
Oh, that's incredible. What can audiences expect to see on this tour? Is there anything you can share about the choreographers or the pieces?
We are sharing the best of the best. We're sharing a work by a legendary ballerina, Jodie Gates, who also founded her own festival, the Laguna Dance Festival, and built a program at USC. The piece is called Beautiful Ones. It's just contemporary ballet at its best. It's just dancers loving with gorgeous music and really looking at the craft. We're featuring a piece called Macaroni by a choreographer from New Zealand named Loughlan Prior. This piece is zany and it explores the Macaroni tells you, it explores the first conversations about being queer in the 16th and 17th century. And then we're closing the program with a piece called Heroes, which was choreographed by Takehiro Ueyama. He's a Japanese choreographer, danced with Paul Taylor. And this piece, Heroes, is inspired by his parents and the Japanese community rebuilding Japan after World War II. So a lot of really dynamic work. And we're expanding on tour to a piece called Exalt, choreographed by Jennifer Archibald. She's a Canadian-American maker, and just love this piece because it merges house music and ballet. Who would have thought?
House music and ballet. I love that. And as you talk about developing voices and developing styles and maybe finding a zany style, how do you balance pushing ballet forward and not alienating audiences? Because I have certainly gone to some shows where I've left and I'm like, okay, that wasn't what I expected. I wanted to see the traditional pieces, the ones that are in the repertoire, and that was a little much. But how do you think about balancing the tradition with the boundary pushing?
I think it's important to think of it like an incredible meal. You're coming in, what's the appetizer feel like? We don't want to push the audience away from the start. We want to kind of give them a baseline of who we are, something they can kind of process. And then once we get that start, we can then start to take this journey. And I think by the second and third piece, they all work together. And the point of the program is really to have this arc of an experience, which is why I love working with so many different choreographers, because I want to see different perspectives. I want to hear different music. And on that point, music has a lot to do with the program. What are the sounds I'm going to hear? The first note you hear, you already have an impression. There's no denying. We hear music and we have thoughts as soon as we hear that music. So some pieces, audience members may love the music. Some may not like it so much, but I think when they go into the next, there is something for everybody in the program. And that's really what I'm aiming for. It's like, oh, I love those 2 pieces. And that's art. Like you don't go to a museum or you don't listen to incredible concerts and think, I loved every single bit of it. You think, oh, the highlights.
That's true. And another thing I'm curious about are trends in ballet. I know a few years ago, it felt like everyone was dancing in socks, which I know you've talked about. Illinois this year, the Justin Peck musical, Tony winning musical, dancers were in sneakers. So I'm wondering if we're going to see sneakers. How do you keep your eye, especially as artistic director, on the trends that are emerging in dance and being mindful of them without leaning too far into the fads?
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's conversations with the choreographers. We had a show once and I wasn't leaning in. I was still really young and trying to understand my role as a director. And I experienced our performance and I was like, wow, everything's really dark. Everything's in socks. and every piece was like this. So since then, I've been mindful about these conversations. Where are you going? Are you willing to do a point piece? So as soon as we insert point, it shifts the night, So, and then you may bring in a piece that has sneakers. We have a Justin Peck piece that I fell in love with that was commissioned by Juilliard, and it's in sneakers. And the dancers move very differently. And I'm all for a program with socks, sneakers, and point shoes. But I just love going, wow, because each of that footwear changes how a person moves. It's hard to dance in point shoes. It's hard to be in socks, and it's hard to be in sneakers. So our role and our job is to just get versed in all of those forms so we can master these beautiful steps that the choreographers are making.
So we have this big tour that's happening this fall, and you're hitting your 20th anniversary in 2025. What's next for BalletX? Because as we speak, you've done tremendous work, but you are a little bit of a David going against the Goliaths, right? New York City ballet revenue is something like $77 million last year, right? So you're going up against some bigger companies, and maybe it's not competition so much as just a peer set. But how do you go from good to great? How do you push this company into the next 20 years?
It really is in the work, it's in the production value, and it's in the people. So as we really intentionally level up and we go from a gritty startup, which even after all these years, that takes work. And going from good to great is intentional. You have to be mindful. It's how we speak to one another. It's how we think about our individual work together. So it's making sure you have a group of dancers that are willing to go the distance, and they do. And you have a team that's willing to make that email and thank someone. So we're building a culture of just, let's go for it. Let's try. Let's be bold. Let's be daring and lead with our values so that we can achieve those goals. So it's really intentional, less reactive and more proactive.
Less reactive, more proactive. I have one more minute with you, and on a personal note, do you miss dancing, or does being the co-founder and executive director of this company scratch that itch?
Oh, I love what I do each and every day. I don't miss it because I'm with it in such a different capacity. And I wouldn't be who I was as a director if I hadn't had those extraordinary 20 years of learning. I learned so much. I love dancing like there was no tomorrow. And I'm so grateful for what I get to do each and every day. And this is I'm so lucky to have this extension of something that I love doing. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to keep making art with people.
What's your advice to people who are dancing right now who want to make a similar evolution, either to choreographer or company founder?
Build bridges, don't burn them. The people around you are your roadway to all the things you want to do. And so I've learned that this incredible community around me who helped do all of this, where they were just my friend, not just, they were friends. My best friend was a lawyer or a development person. And, they were willing to roll their sleeves up, literally take time from their busy lives to help. And people are there, and they will help you build something, because I think it's the American dream. We're creators, and it's our human destiny to build and not destroy. Build, build, build.
Build, build, build. I love that. Christine Cox, co-founder, artistic and executive director of BalletX. Thank you so, so much for joining us, and merde for your tour to the Joyce and beyond.
Merde, thank you so much.